He couldn't feel his legs anymore. The jungle had swallowed him whole. No trail, no signal, no sound except the deafening roar of rain hammering down through a canopy so thick it turned midday into midnight. His lips were cracked and bleeding. His boots had rotted off his feet 3 days ago. And somewhere, deep in the shadows between the ancient trees, something was watching him. His name was Daniel Pratten. He was 34 years old. He was supposed to be home by now. This is the true story of how one man survived 14 days alone in one of the most dangerous rainforests on Earth, and came back from the edge of death to tell it. Daniel Pratten was not a reckless man. He was a British schoolteacher living in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, a quiet, methodical person who loved the outdoors the way most people love a good book, deeply, privately, and with great reverence. He had trekked before. He knew the basics. He respected nature. In October 2012, Daniel decided to trek through the Maliau Basin, a remote, largely unexplored conservation area in the heart of Sabah, Malaysian Borneo. Known as Sabah's Lost World, the Maliau Basin is a place where science still has not catalogued every species. The trees grow over 60 meters tall, the rivers run fast and cold. Leeches drop from leaves like rain. And the jungle floor is so dense that GPS signals often fail entirely. Daniel had planned a multi-day solo trek along a known route. He had food for 5 days, a map, a compass, and a satellite phone, though the satellite phone, as he would soon discover, was damaged and nearly useless. He had told friends when to expect him back. He left on a Tuesday morning with a full pack, a confident stride, and absolutely no idea that he was walking into the worst 2 weeks of his life. His girlfriend back home, Sarah, later recalled that he had called her the night before he set off. He was excited. He talked about the hornbills he hoped to see, the waterfalls he'd read about, the absolute silence of a jungle untouched by roads or cities. He had no reason to be afraid. Little did he know, the jungle had already decided his fate. The disaster point of no return it began with a river. On day 2 of his trek, Daniel reached a river crossing that his map marked as straightforward. But the rains had come early that season. The river, normally knee-deep and slow, was now a churning, waist-high torrent of brown water, carrying broken branches and debris downstream at terrifying speed. He should have turned back. He knew it. But he was already hours from camp. The sky was darkening, and he convinced himself he could make it across. He stepped in. The current took him instantly. He was swept 30, maybe 40 meters downstream before he managed to grab a root and drag himself, gasping and bleeding, onto the opposite bank. His pack was still on his back, but waterlogged and destroyed. His map was pulp, his food supply reduced to a few sealed protein bars, and his compass was gone, torn from his belt by the current. His satellite phone flickered once and died. He was on the wrong side of the river. He had no map, no compass, no way to call for help, and the jungle, indifferent and ancient, closed around him like a fist. He told himself to stay calm. He told himself rescuers would come. He told himself he just needed to find high ground and wait. But the jungle had other plans. Days 1-3. After the river, Daniel moved carefully at first, trying to retrace a logical path back toward the trail. But the Maliau Basin does not work like a city park. Every direction looks identical. The undergrowth is impenetrable, in places forcing detours that loop back on themselves. He walked for hours and ended up, he later realized, almost exactly where he had started. By the third day, his protein bars were gone. His water bottle was full. The jungle offered no shortage of rain, but his body was screaming for calories. He began to notice the insects. Fat, slow-moving beetles clinging to bark, termites swarming in exposed wood. He had read once, somewhere, that termites were high in protein. He had read it the way you read something you think you'll never need. He needed it now. He pressed a handful of termites into his mouth and chewed without thinking. They tasted like nothing, like wet wood and dirt. He ate more. He would spend the next 11 days eating whatever the jungle offered. Beetle. Larvae pulled from rotting logs, small river crabs caught by hand in shallow streams, wild figs when he was lucky enough to find them. He lost weight rapidly. But he stayed alive. Days 4-7, the body begins to break by day. 4, the jungle was doing what jungles do to human bodies. His feet, bare after his boots, disintegrated from constant moisture, were covered in deep cuts. Leeches found him constantly. He pulled dozens off himself each morning, leaving small, bleeding wounds that the humidity refused to let heal. A gash on his left shin, earned from a fall over a hidden root, began to show signs of infection. The skin around it puffed and reddened. He had no antiseptic, no bandages. He packed the wound with mud because he had nothing else. The nights were the worst part. The Maliau Basin at night is not dark. It is a different kind of dark entirely. It is absolute. And it is loud. The jungle screams at night with frogs and insects and things Daniel could not identify. He slept in the roots of large trees, curled into himself, shaking with cold and fear, listening to every sound and imagining what made it. On the 5th night, something large moved through the undergrowth near him. He heard it breathing, a heavy, rhythmic sound. He pressed himself against the tree and did not move for 2 hours. Whatever it was, it eventually moved on. He never saw it. He never wanted to. By day 7, he was talking to himself. Not mumbling, full conversations. He talked to Sarah. He talked to his mother. He told them he was fine, that he was coming home, that they shouldn't worry. The jungle swallowed his voice and gave him nothing back. This is the phase that Daniel later found hardest to describe. The hunger had moved past pain into something almost peaceful, which he knew was dangerous. His thinking was slow, heavy, like moving through water. He began to see things, not drama. Tick hallucinations, but small visual tricks. A shape between trees that looked like a person. A light in the distance that vanished when he moved toward it. Once, he was absolutely certain he heard a helicopter. He screamed until his throat bled. There was no helicopter. He found a small waterfall on day 9 and sat beneath it for an hour, letting the cold water run over his infected leg. The wound was improving slightly, or he told himself it was. He caught 3 small crabs in the pool below the falls and ate them raw shell, and all cracking them between rocks. He said later that they tasted like the finest meal of his life. He thought about giving up. He admitted this openly. After his rescue, with the directness of a man who had nothing left to hide. There was a morning, day 10. He believed. when he sat down against a tree and genuinely considered not getting up again. He was exhausted beyond anything he had ever experienced. His body was failing. He was alone in a way that most human beings never experience and never will. And then he thought about Sarah. Not dramatically. No sudden vision, no voice from above. Just the simple, quiet memory of her face across a breakfast table. And he stood up. On day 12, Daniel found a trail marker. It was almost invisible. A small orange piece of survey tape, tied to a branch, weathered and faded. But it was there. It was human. Someone had been here, and someone had marked this spot for a reason. He followed the direction the tape seemed to indicate, moving slowly, his legs barely cooperating. 2 hours later, he found another marker. Then another. He was on some kind of survey trail. Unmaintained, barely visible, but real. He began to cry. He walked and cried at the same time, stumbling through undergrowth, following those small scraps of orange tape like they were made of gold. The trail was leading somewhere. S. Where meant people. People meant rescue. On the morning of day 14, a search and rescue team from Saba Parks, who had been combing the Maliau Basin since Daniel had failed to return, heard a sound. A weak, ragged shouting coming from dense jungle to their east. They pushed through the undergrowth and found him. Daniel Pratten was standing upright. Barely. He had lost over 15 kilograms. His feet were raw and infected. His shin wound had begun to heal but was still angry and swollen. His clothes were rags. His eyes, the rescue team noted, were completely alert. He looked at them and said very quietly, "I knew someone would come." He was airlifted to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Kota Kinabalu, where he was treated for malnutrition, multiple infections, and severe dehydration. He recovered fully. Sarah flew out within 24 hours of his rescue. He proposed to her in the hospital. She said yes. In interviews afterward, Daniel said one thing that has stayed with people. The jungle wasn't trying to kill me. It was indifferent. And somehow, that made it easier. There was no malice to fight, just reality. And reality, you can survive 14 days. No map, no food, no boots, no help. Just a man, a jungle, and the stubborn, unreasonable human refusal to stop breathing. Daniel Pratten's story is not about luck. It is about the quiet, grinding, unglamorous decision to survive, made over and over again, every single morning, even when every instinct screams to stop. The Maliau Basin is still there, still wild, still ancient, still indifferent. And somewhere in its roots, and rivers, and shadows there is a waterfall where a man once sat, ate river crabs, and decided the world was still worth getting back to. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe to WWW Miracles for more real survival stories from around the world. Comment below, which impossible survival story do you want to see next?